Hey, welcome to Life After Nursing School. I'm your host, Caroline Dana, aka Nurse Coach Caroline, and I'm here to help you, the new nurse, thrive in your career. As a former nurse recruiter, nurse manager, and now your personal new nurse career coach, I'm obsessed with making sure you don't just survive your first couple of years at the bedside. I want you to absolutely rock them. From the challenges to the triumphs, I'll be right here with you, giving you the real-world advice and support that you need to shine. Whether you're in nursing school getting ready for life after, or you're already out there in nurse life feeling overwhelmed or even questioning your confidence, I've got your back. I'll be sharing tips, tricks, resources, and strategies that are just for you. We'll dive into everything from landing that dream nursing job to slaying imposter syndrome, and most importantly, how to keep that spark alive and stay the vibrant and amazing nurse that you are. So if you're ready to tackle the things nursing school did not cover, like how to build a career, trust yourself, and keep your passion strong, then get comfortable because we are about to dive in and make nurse life the best life.
Welcome back to the Life After Nursing School podcast. This episode is all about quitting your job strategically. I consider it part 2 to last week's episode, so if you haven't listened to last week's episode yet and you're considering quitting, I would start there. Okay, before we jump into today's topic, if you would just take a moment to stop whatever you're doing, whether you're driving, you're doing laundry, you're walking your dog, please take a moment to submit a rating or review of this show. It would make me honestly so happy. No one tells you when you're podcasting that it can actually sometimes feel like speaking into an abyss and wondering if whoever is out there is finding this show helpful, useful, or even enjoyable. Okay, so please, if you have a moment, please review the show. It would mean a lot to me. All right, thank you. Moving on. Okay, I want to start this episode that is focused on quitting by saying this. Leaving well is just as important as choosing well. Okay, so before we tell our manager, see you never and peace out, we need to first define what we are running toward. We aren't leaving just to escape, but we are leaving to instead level up, to expand, to reach our potential, and to take a step closer to our dream job or dream life. All right, it's imperative that you can answer these questions to help you decide what you're running toward, okay? What type of work pace do I want? Okay, the pace, how fast or slow? What skill do I want to learn next? Do I want higher acuity? Do I want a leadership position? Do I want autonomy? What drained me in my past job and what energized me? What am I naturally good at? I recently reposted on social media a reel from Reese Witherspoon. She was sharing how someone called her and they wanted career advice. Reese asked the woman what her talents were, and the woman struggled to tell her and list any of her talents. Reese told her that she needed to figure out what her talents were because success really comes when we lean into our talents versus just dreams. And I honestly thought this was incredible advice. And to take it a step further, our talents are often things that we're good at. And when we are good at things, we are happy, life is fun, and we feel like we're on cloud 9, which is exactly how we want to feel in our life. I mean, as much as possible, right? So to give you an example of this, while I was an ER nurse, I was shadowing an inpatient nurse director while I was getting my master's. At the time, our recruiter for the hospital was struggling to drum up interest at job fairs and really struggling to connect with candidates. And we as an organization were starting to feel the effects of the nurse vacancy rates at the hospital, right? Like nurses were leaving positions and then the positions were not being filled and we were feeling like we were stretched thin from a staffing perspective. Well, I actually offered to accompany the recruiter to the job fairs because I felt like I could easily talk to any candidate about life as a nurse at this organization. And I also really wanted to get my hours in for my master's, okay? And the inpatient nurse director that I was following said, sure, go, that would be great. So I went and I connected with a lot of applicants and quickly we had interest and a lot of prospects. At the end of my rotation, the nurse director said, Caroline, upper leadership has decided that they would really like it if you would be our hospital recruiter. And I was shocked. But this nurse leader saw something in me that I didn't see. And this was actually the most pivotal moment in my nursing career because I would never have had recruitment experience, and therefore this business probably wouldn't exist. If you are not sure what you are naturally good at, pay attention to patterns. What do your coworkers consistently come to you for? What kinds of questions do they ask? What strengths are highlighted in your performance review? What do patients thank you for over and over again? Those recurring themes are not random. They are clues. Sometimes we overlook our own gifts because we feel like they're easy for us. But the things that feel effortless to you are often the very things that make you valuable to others. The more we know about what we want in a future role and the skill set that we can bring to the table, the more intentional our job search will be. And hopefully the next role will be so very aligned with who we are and our career aspirations. Now, how the heck do we leave our job strategically? My first recommendation is don't quit until you have another job lined up. With that being said, also take time when you're searching for this next position if possible. We want to make sure this is a step in the right direction and not us moving backwards. When people let emotion dictate their career decisions, they often end up in a job as equally unfulfilling or misaligned with who they are and where they want to go. There are a few things we need to know when considering a career pivot. First and foremost, if you don't have 1 full year of RN experience, I highly recommend that you do not quit your job until you have another job lined up, because it may actually be quite challenging to get another job before that 1 year mark. So we don't want to quit and be without pay while we're struggling to get another job. If we are considering a pivot, we are also taking time to polish and update our resume. We aren't waiting to piecemeal it together when we see a job posting that we're interested in. After we have clarity on the roles that we want to apply to, it's important to also line up references. I recommend asking someone in leadership if they would be a reference for you. Now, this doesn't mean you have to tell your manager that you're looking for a new gig. You could ask a trusted charge nurse, that's a leadership position, a unit educator, a house supervisor, or someone with a leadership title. I recommend getting at least 2 references in place. One can be a peer, and again, the other in leadership. Now, I'm going to suggest something that you may likely decide you don't want to hear, but it is this. I highly recommend you schedule a one-on-one meeting with your manager and tell him or her that you would love their input on career planning. Here you will tell them that you have learned a lot, you have grown so much, and you find it's time to start considering your next career chapter. Share with them the specialty or type of role that you are considering and ask their advice. A good manager may even suggest an area of nursing that you weren't considering or help you network internally so you can stay and move within the organization. Of course, they likely don't want to lose an employee, but I find that managers usually know that you're itching to leave whether you tell them or not. So you might as well have that conversation. Another important thing here is that we are remaining reliable, hardworking, and performing well in our job until our very last day. This ensures that you are leaving on good terms and you're open to employment opportunities in the future. Most hospitals actually have the ability to mark you as not rehirable or do not rehire if you call out after providing your resignation notice. Okay, but we won't get into that right now. Let's talk about transferring roles internally versus resigning from the organization completely. So an internal transfer means that you are moving from one role into another within the same health system. It could be in the same hospital or it could be a different location, but still for the same health system. The pros to an internal transfer is that you understand the benefits of that job, you understand the retirement package, because obviously that doesn't change. Unless, of course, you increase or decrease your contracted hours. You have a much easier onboarding when you're an internal transfer because you are a brand new employee. So you don't need to sit in on hospital orientation again. You likely know the lay of the land, and it's an easier and quicker transition. You probably will be using all of the same equipment, resources, and electronic medical record. Now, the cons to an internal transfer are that you need manager support to transfer. Even if you get the job, your current manager can usually keep you for a longer period than 2 weeks if their staffing needs the support and need you to fill in those staffing holes. Politics can be a problem here too, depending on if you have a supportive manager here or not. You could be subjected to disgruntled manager that you're leaving. Now let's talk about pros and cons of an external move, aka you're resigning from the organization completely and beginning a new position at a completely different health system or company. A pro here is that you likely have more power to negotiate. Leaving organizations every couple of years is the most effective way to make more money, especially as a nurse. A new organization means a fresh new culture and the ability to reinvent yourself. A great option if your previous job was extremely toxic or your reputation wasn't where you wanted it to be. Now, the cons of an external job would be unknown environment and starting at the bottom of the seniority list. Now, seniority comes into play as a staff nurse with things like selecting vacation weeks, hospital parking, and working holidays. It might feel like a big deal, but seniority is not a good reason to stay in a role if you're feeling unfulfilled. I also want to add seniority basically means if there is a list of staff nurses on a particular unit, the person with the most priority or who has been there the longest typically gets first pick for a few things. Like I had mentioned, what holidays maybe they want to work or what vacation weeks in the summer they want to request off. So that is a small perk from a seniority standpoint. You also have years of service within that hospital or organization. And if you have so many years, sometimes you get additional perks. A lot of times it's parking, but I know at one of the hospitals I used to work at, you had to be there for 20 to 30 years to get a hospital parking spot in the garage. So that was a really long time to stay somewhere. And I don't recommend staying somewhere just for a hospital parking spot if you're not feeling fulfilled. I also want to add here, if you're taking a new job and you have something major planned, like, going to your sister's wedding in Idaho in the summer, when you accept the offer, you can explain that to the person offering you the job. You can say, look, I want to just disclose that I will need this week in July off because I'm going to Idaho for my sister's wedding. Okay. And they will likely approve this. And that way you don't have to worry. You're not going to have to work your sister's wedding. Okay. Now, new environments can be overwhelming, but don't let that hold you back. I left a small community hospital that was magnet recognized many times, and I left it after close to a decade of working there. And I went to a large level 1 trauma center that was not magnet recognized at the time. And everyone told me good luck and that I would be eaten alive and that it's just not the same, right? There was a lot of fear mongering at this small community hospital about what it's like to work at a large institution or what would happen if we were bought out by a larger institution. And honestly, it may be a little hesitant, but I actually ended up having a great experience at this large level 1 trauma center. First of all, I got a huge pay bump, and this large hospital offered many different learning opportunities for managers. So I was actually able to take a course on recruiting, interviewing, evaluating candidates that, of course, has helped sharpen my skill set for my future business, which is obviously what I'm doing now. Now, the grass is not always greener, and usually you find yourself in a new environment with a new set of problems. However, it often is whatever you make of it. You can choose to focus on the negative or you can choose to focus on the good. All right, so this next part is critical. We need to test before we jump, okay? We need to make sure it's the right move before we accept our next offer. So before you resign, before you dramatically pivot, before you tell everyone you're leaving, we need to gather information. First, start with yourself. Grab a journal, open your notes app on your phone, and create a checklist for your ideal work environment. Ask yourself things like, do I want fast-paced or slower pace? How much autonomy do I want? Is there a specific patient population I feel drawn to? What skills am I excited to learn? What do I dislike most about my current job? Is there a patient population or condition I would prefer not to work with if I can help it? Is there a shift I absolutely do not want to work? We are essentially creating a wish list, and it's what we want and also what we don't want. Once you have clarity on that, then we move into research. Start networking. Talk to nurses in the specialty that you're curious about. Ask them to grab coffee, pick their brain. The great thing about nurses is that we're pretty much brutally honest, okay? So ask them things like, what does an average shift actually look like? What do they love about their job? What drains them? What surprised them about their role? If your hospital allows floating, or your shift or your unit often has nurses float to other units, be willing to volunteer. Exposure to different environments, even if it's not one you're particularly interested in, can spark interests that you didn't even know you had. The goal is to remove fantasy from the equation. The more accurately we understand a unit or specialty, the more realistic our expectations will be. And then once you have done your homework, it's time to apply. And here is a big tip. If you receive an offer you are seriously considering, ask to shadow the unit before accepting. Most hospitals will allow this once you have some experience, okay? Most new grad positions will not allow shadowing. Shadowing lets you see how the team interacts, how leadership shows up, what the workflow feels like. Ask the nurse that you're shadowing what the good and the bad are here in this workplace. Always shadow before accepting if you can. This removes the blind leap fear. It turns a risky jump into an informed decision. And here's a good rule of thumb. Once you land your next job, check your organization's policy. Most hospitals require anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks notice, but every place is different. Do not assume and look it up so you leave the right way. If you cannot give the recommended amount, you actually can also be marked as not hireable in the future. I also recommend resigning in person with your manager or at the very least over the phone. I know sending an email feels easier. I know it can feel awkward to say this in person, but having that conversation directly is professional. It allows you to end things on a strong note, even if the relationship has been rocky. And you might be thinking, I am never coming back here anyway. But let me just gently say this, never say never. Healthcare is a small world. You do not know when you might run into that manager again. You do not know if you will cross paths in another hospital, another leadership role, or even a completely different setting. It's imperative that you protect your reputation. Leave professionally, leave respectfully, and leave in a way that keeps doors open. Future you will be grateful that you did. Before we wrap up this conversation, I would be doing you a disservice if I did not talk about the bad reasons people stay in jobs, because I hear these all the time. Okay, let's start with PTO. I hear, I can't leave. I have accrued so much PTO, right? Time off. Okay, I hear you, but here's the reality. Most employers will pay out your unused PTO when you leave, and your next job might actually have a better accrual rate. So do not stay in a job that is draining you just because you're holding on to vacation hours. Time off is important, but your daily experience matters more. All right, the next one. I can't leave. What about my seniority? Yes, maybe it took you 1, 2, or even 5 years to climb the ladder. Maybe you finally get first pick of holidays. Maybe you even get better vacation weeks. But ask yourself this. If you are unhappy 98% of the time, does holiday preference really make up for that? And here is something else to consider. Every year you stay somewhere that you're miserable is a year you are not building seniority somewhere else that you could actually be a better fit. Okay, now this next one is the one that really pulls at my heartstrings. I can't leave. I owe it to my unit to stay. I owe it to my manager to stay. What will they do if I leave? Let me say this gently but clearly. You do not owe anyone your long-term unhappiness. Staying in a job that no longer serves you sends a message to yourself that everyone else's needs comes before your own. And I can tell you from experience, I have left multiple roles in my career every single time the unit moved on. Leadership adjusted. Someone new was hired. That is not harsh. That is just reality. And instead of letting that sting, let it set you free, because that means you're allowed to choose yourself without guilt. Okay, so I think that wraps up this little mini series here on whether we are burnt out or outgrown our room, whether we want to pivot, and what that looks like. Now, again, if you don't mind leaving a review or rating today on this show, I would be so grateful. And thank you so much for showing up today. As always, I have one hand for me and the other for you. Signing off. Well, that's it for today's episode of Life After Nursing School. I hope you feel more confident and ready to tackle the challenges that come with starting your nursing career. Remember, the first year or two might not be easy, but with the right mindset, you can overcome anything. If you found value in today's episode, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Also, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps so much in reaching other new nurses like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, you've got this. Take care and see you next time.